Good morning. My name is John Talk. I am so privileged to be the director here at Emmanuel Episcopal Church in Southern Pines, North Carolina. I want to say welcome to this second in a series of conversations, of looks at times in the life of the world, times in life of individuals, times in life of communities when God came in and made an ontological change. That is, when God came in and changed the world or an individual or a community in a fundamental way. That people were in one state of being and then they were in another. And last week, we began this series looking at the first chapter of Genesis. You will remember it from your childhood. On the first day, God created. On the second day, God said. On the third day, God said, etc., etc., etc. And all of a sudden, we have birds in the air and fishes in the sea and creeping things on the earth and crawling things on the earth. And we have human beings. And on the sixth day, it was good. And on the seventh day, God rests. We have another creation story, a second creation story. There are actually two. The first one on the first chapter of Genesis, the second one in the second chapter of Genesis, and they come from two different traditions. I'm not going to read you the entirety of the second creation story today, but I am going to read you one paragraph of God creating, God enlivening us. When the Lord God made heaven and earth, when no shrub of the field was yet on earth, and no grasses of the field had yet sprouted, because the Lord God had not yet sent rain upon the earth, and there was no man to till the soil, but a flow or a flood would well up from the ground and water the whole surface of the earth. The Lord God made humans from the dust of the earth. He blew into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living thing. The dirt of the earth we were formed from, and made a living thing when God blew, God's spirit, God's wind, God's breath. In Hebrew, you've heard me use this term over and over before, God's ruach, into the nostrils of that first man. A man called Earth. The word Adam, the name Adam, simply means dirt. And into this dirt that became human, God blew God's spirit. And that person was alive. He had been dead. He had been dead, just a collection of blood and muscle and sinew and bones, organs, nothing but dirt, and became truly alive, became a creature, became something that thought and felt and acted on its own volition when God's Spirit came into him. I think so too for us. I can remember the before time, the time when I acted entirely on my own volition. I still act on my own volition a lot. But the time when I acted entirely on my own volition, and how that seems today to be empty and dry and almost lifeless. But living in relationship with God and living in relationship with you, God's people, brings joy and life and wholeness into my world, into my life. That the more and more we take on the Spirit of God, the more and more we take on God's ideas for our ideas, God's will for our will, God's desires for our desires, the more we become like we are truly meant to be. So breathe deep into the Spirit of God. Breathe deep into the breath of God. Let God